So welcome back, everybody. We're going to start by showing the trailer of the film, which is about Combatants for Peace, which is another great vehicle to learn more. So Jason, could you play that trailer?
I was 4 years old when we were attacked on Yom Kippur. I remember us running to the shelter in Tel Aviv. It's very concrete for a child. They want to kill us. And I really didn't understand, why do they hate us so much?
ناصر أخوي كان أصغر مني له كان تقريبا عمره 14 سنة. الجيش اللي حكوا له أطلقوا عليه رصاصة. أنا ما بعرفش كيف هذيك اللحظة قدرت أتحمل الموقف.
كان عندي حلم اني اكون مقاتل في صفوف الثوره الفلسطينيه يعني واكون جزء من الكفاح المسلح ضد الاحتلال. كنت مستعد انه اموت في سبيل هاي الافكار.
I was admitted into the most prestigious unit in the Israeli army. I was extremely proud. I knew my father was proud.
صرت افكر كثير ايش انا دوري في الحياه هون. فاخترت اني اعمل عمليه استشهاديه. זה מקומם, זה פשוט מרגיש טרור. ככה מרגיש טרור בעיניי.
מישהו התקשר ואמר שיש פלסטינים שמוכנים להיפגש איתנו.
كنت كثير خايف انه قد يكون في مصيدة يعني هون.
We find that we actually have something in common. That willingness to kill people you don't know.
عندهم قوة يا جميل مش طبيعي. بده يجي كم واحد من المقاتلين من أجل السلام رفضوا الخدمة يغيروها.
إذا أنت قريتي عن نيلسون مانديلا شخص لحاله غير دوله كان كل الدين وغير كل النظام، وأنت بتعرفي إنه شخص لحاله، كل شخص لحاله كيف قدر يسوي هيك؟ كيف قدر يسوي؟
אנחנו מזמינים את כוחות הביטחון לפשוט את המדים ולהצטרף אלינו.
أنا ما بفقدش الأمل في فكرة إنه السلام، إنه ما في طريق ثاني غير السلام.
Okay. Steve, the filmmaker, is actually here, but he's outside of the sanctuary right now. When he comes back in, we'll introduce him. So I strongly urge people to see the film. And the New York Times did a feature last weekend on Combatants for Peace. CBST put that out on our social media in advertising tonight's program. But if you haven't seen that article, definitely worth reading the article that is about Combatants for Peace. So we're going to start with some conversation up here and then open it up to questions. And we're not asking people to write things down because it is Shabbat. And we are going to ask people to be really self-regulating in your questions and in your comments, and to really be self-aware, self-conscious, self-regulating, to really ask questions. All questions are welcome. There's no topic that's off base, but what's what won't be accepted is disrespect or, you know what I mean, right? Everybody knows what I mean. Oh, here's Steve. Here's the filmmaker. Steve is the filmmaker. We just showed the trailer, Steve. So we just showed the trailer, and Steve is the filmmaker and lives in the Hudson Valley, and we're so happy you're here tonight as well. Thanks so much for being here. So I wonder if I could, Souli, one question that came up that you referred to in your talk that I think people are very eager to hear a little bit more about, which is how did you make that journey from the dream of being a Palestinian resistance fighter through violence to becoming a resistance fighter through peace?
Thank you, Rabbi. So yeah, as I explained a bit in my talk about my journey. So for me, I had it was multiple experiences and a long journey of transformation, what we say. So from where I started and where I am now, there is, first of all, it's important for me to mention there is a direct link to who I am today from childhood until now. It's not I was a bad guy and now I'm the good guy. I just want to get out of the, what you call it, binary thing and the American Hollywood movie of the bad guys and the good guys. It's not my thing. So first time I introduced to about the nonviolence and the power of nonviolence was in jail when I was 15, practically under the context and the title what we call Battle of the Stomach, which means the food hunger strike that we practice in jail a lot of times because basically the Israeli police, they didn't treat us as war prisoners because they don't recognize us as war prisoners, neither political prisoners, rather security threat. And that goes to the conditions inside jail. In order to improve the conditions, we have to do food hunger strike, what we call in Arabic and Hebrew, mayu milh, salt and water. And you people that have religious and history know this is very deep concept of the land when we talk about salt and water. My first hunger strike, I was 15 for 16 days with many, like 120 kids in jail. It's a military jail. And the last hunger strike was for 17 days with 4,000 prisoners, political prisoners. We were a very organized community in jail. And the idea of solidarity, tadamun in Arabic, is very important. So we coordinate the hunger strike in advance with union, workers' union, universities, secretly. And so basically we don't eat at all until they accept most of our demands, and then we stop the hunger strike. Of course, it's the hardest time in jail. Like being in jail is very harsh, and after this, the hardest days are the hunger strike because you're hungry, you become skinny and worry, and also time become very slow, and you lose hair, you become sick, you might die, and that's not our goal to die. And the hunger strike tool strategy, we took it from the Irish hunger strike, the famous story. So just to bring it back to the Irish as a credit, because we like to take credit about everything. And also some people think, oh, this is, Arab Muslims, they just don't like life. They just want to die. This is just to break that. That's how I personally introduced to nonviolence, and practically by my body, physically and directly. And of course, afterwards, I studied, I worked in the library, and I studied about other nonviolence, like leaders in the world, like Mandela, Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, because we also always mention the man. We have also to break that. But also, like, I want to say, some people think the nonviolence concepts are a Western concepts. And I am opposing this because this is really deeply rooted in our culture, what we call it sumud. In Arabic and Hebrew, by the way, I just find later. And actually, that's how I met Gili at Sumud Freedom Camp in South Hebron Hills. Some people here were in there, actually, when we did the action, nonviolence action. My sister's name Sumud, because she was born when we were in jail, me and my brother. So this is very deep in our culture, the idea of resilience and steadfastness that coming from the olive trees, basically, that deep down in the ground, in the land.
Thank you so much. It's easy, I think, for people from a distance to misunderstand the power of the nonviolence you're describing. This is not just the absence of hitting somebody in the face. This is a very, very, very deep practice. I think one of the issues on the minds of a lot of people here, since October 7th especially, is the fear that the right wing is correct, right? The idea that, oh my God, if we, the sober up idea that I'll sober up and reject my commitments to peace and to coexistence and to a shared future, because what October 7th, I'm not saying this is what I think, I'm repeating the line that October 7th was a sobering act for anybody who believed in peace on October 6th. So I'm wondering if both of you could respond to that from within your own communities and from your perspective. Did October 7th, how did that impact this, and how do you react when you hear that kind of, well, October 7th sobered me up and I'm rejecting the left or I'm rejecting peace? I now understand there's no way forward that's not violent or use of military force.
As I said before, October 7 was a real shock, and I said before that even for me as a peace activist, and I can say that after the October 7, I needed to refine and rebuild myself, my identity as Israeli, as Jewish, as peace activist, and as part of Combatants for Peace. And it wasn't easy, and it took time. So I can understand people, like my friend, even one of my child, that is saying now that don't ask me, then don't tell me now about the children in Gaza. I don't have the place, I can't bear it now. I have my own grief and my own pain. My kid, one of the three, he went in 1 week to 5 funerals because he lost friends in the Nova Party and in other places, even soldiers, but they are still friends. So it's very difficult and very complicated, and I think that we need to give people time and not to press. I will say that I'm proud with my friends in Combatants for Peace because we succeeded together to work the pain and the broke that we had, everyone. Because the 7th of October was for us as Israelis like going back to the trauma of the Holocaust. And, you know, children in the hiding and under the beds. And for the Palestinian, when they saw the people that are going with the things on the back and running away from the homes, just this week, 2 days ago, we met Munia, the girl that her parents are in Gaza now, still in Gaza. And she told me they left everything behind in the apartment, because in the house in Gaza City, because they were sure they will come back in 2 days or something like this. Wow, same as the Nakba. Like, both sides are living again the trauma, and this is very hard and complicated to ask people like to let go. But it's possible. And we can do it together. And I'll use the words that I said to Jamil, like a few days after, 1 week after the 7th of October, we had the Zoom meeting. We started with Zoom meeting with a little group, the leaders, and then only the Israelis are sharing, and then only the Palestinians are sharing, and we give safe place to our activists. And then I talked with Jamil and said, Jamil, we can do it. We will go through the pain together. Some of us can do it. Some of us can hold the pain of both sides inside. Some of us still cannot, but it's okay. Don't press nobody. And I also think that one of the questions that I asked myself the 7th of October is, what is the role of us as a movement, as combatants for peace? What are we doing now? And the answer was, I need my two hands now. We need to hold like this, the flame of hope. We will do it, and someday there will be more and more people that will take like the hope from the flame, and it will spread. So this is our role now, and I'm really proud that we are succeed by doing it.
Thank you. I just add to what Iris said. Okay, so yeah, like if we talk about like this, the last few months since October 7, 8, 9, until now, with the traumatic events, the war in Gaza right now, we spoke about the hostages, we spoke about like thousands of Palestinian prisoners, we spoke about wounded people, we speak about the settler violence in West Bank, we speak about a lot of trauma, displacement, and fear, that people live in fear, and trauma responses, like Iris mentioned. So, of course, this has effect and impacted so many people, how they respond. And as you said, like, people respond differently. And it was really like a big challenge to hold even combatants for peace together. By my nature, personally, I don't want to take credit because it's really a work of other people that everyone has give their energy and their time despite their society's pressure on them and their families to step back. This was the pressure everywhere, in both sides. And you know, the idea that the other side just understand force. This is exist in both societies. And second, to mention as a fact also, that I personally speak Hebrew also, so I'm a bit privileged in that sense. I have access to both. But most of the people, also in combatants for peace, not everybody, they receive the news and the analysts and everything from one or another resource. So we live, as I've said always, we live in two different movies, totally. And also like to extend your empathy to what we call the other while the bloodshed is happening. This is like really a huge request to ask people to do. And many people are not able to even think about it. I think some people has the gift to hold space for this collective joint pain, to call it, without comparing who's suffering more, because of course we speak about dynamic and everything and the systematic violence that happened there. There is a lot of, and some people maybe have the gift to give this recognition, like Iris talked to Jamil, for example. I have some of my Israeli friends, not just from Combatants for Peace, have conversations with me. I personally have zero problem, rather actually the opposite. I want to show empathy and solidarity with anyone that really was harmed and feel harmed and in pain. And that's my duty as someone that can hold tense time, like a heavy managing this kind of situation. Because I have experience, I've been in jail and I've been like in this kind of life. And also I come from a tribal system that practice like what we call sulha, which means reconciliation, that also include recognition and a process for this kind of situation specifically among tribes, but it can work in the national struggle. So I have a lot of experience from that as well, personally. With that said, I also have people asking me, oh, you still believe in nonviolence? And Palestinian friends, at the beginning, I want to mention something that can maybe trigger some people, so I'm really in advance apologizing, but I want to be truth also. And maybe we are not trying to comfort people, like this is honesty part of it. My personal position in this was from October 7, 8, 9. I definitely feel empathy with our Israeli members that lost somebody or felt threat or fear. It's all legitimate. What was not legitimate for me among the activists, I'm speaking about it honestly, I'm talking about my friends. Like in the bigger activist community. So I was thinking, okay, we, when I say we as Palestinians, within these groups has been also subjected to violence, Israeli violence, governmental violence, jails, uprooted trees, and all the things that you know under the occupation, and still some of us has chosen to come to meet Israelis and be in these circles. So when the Israelis were hurt, collectively, some Israelis stepped back. And for me, this was really a historical test to say we can't just speak about peace and love when we are in the power dynamic, in the privilege, and comfortable. This is the time for me was to filter friends. I lost friends, also on both sides, to filter partners, and to give up on some people, which I usually don't do actually. It's really hard for me to say that, to do that, but I have to. And also to strengthen the partnership with the people that really stood fast, despite all the challenges. And for me, I can remember words of one of our founders, Avner, that he's, people knows him, like Avner is really wise person, like he's a professor, but on the moment of a pressure from his side, from the people, I was calm, I don't know how, and he called me and said, Souli, after I was telling him my optimistic message as usual, he said, what can I do? I'm a pessimistic historian, and you are optimistic revolutionary. This is our typical rule in the whole movement. But then he told me, I'm blindly following you. For me, this was enough. And that's it. I felt combatants will be safe, even if we lose one person here, there. And later on, Iris, as the community holder of the community, of the activists, I remember you told me you have 600 people on your WhatsApp that want to join combatants will be. So there is this, tbakachno, I don't know the term in English, tbakhut, for the Israeli left, that people, oh, we saw the light, there is no partner. How do you translate this? Sober up. Bakachno, yes. And there is the other side. A lot of people actually, including Palestinian diaspora, first time I see they're really curious and supportive. Palestinians, Israelis, like globals that see people searching, people by nature, no matter in which spectrum they stand, left, right, I don't even like this division. People are searching for hope. That's what I know. People can't stay in this darkness forever. This is impossible, historically, psychologically. It doesn't work. So I think now this war of conscience is happening now. So there is a lot of changes unfolding. It's a lot of energies happening right now. So that's why I think our time is now to show up and to bring our voice loud. And that's why we were in all the mainstream media, actually. CNN, New York Times, you mentioned, and other places. And I don't feel there is a lot of opposition, by the way. Surprisingly, people are really searching for real hope and for real change. And there is not military solutions anymore. October 7 showed many things. One thing, that military solution is not working with all the weapons and everything. It shows that running the conflict is not working. And we know there is radicalization also on our side of the story, of course. Like, we are not talking about bad and good, but we have to encounter, in order to encounter radicalization, there should be hope, not real hope, not fake, and alternative to people to struggle. This is basic right for people to struggle, and for us, we are offering a nonviolent struggle.
Thank you so much for that. One of the things that's become dominant in the conversation here in New York and I'd say the whole United States. And the reason I said, and I appreciate what you said, don't say pro-Palestine, pro-Israel. Here in the United States, that's what it has become, right? That's the discourse here is, if you express compassion, empathy, concern for Israeli Jews, you've abandoned a commitment to Palestinians. If you express a concern, a compassion, a commitment for Palestinians, you've abandoned Israel. And even so, just saying in one sentence, I'm supporting I support the liberation of both people, so to speak, and I believe them to be intricately interwoven, and there is no future for one without the other. And anybody who claims that's possible is signing a death warrant for all of us. But here, that's what the conversation has become, which is who's right and who's going to win. These are all with a lot of air quotes. Who's right and who's going to win, and you've got to choose which side. And it's horrifying. It's just, that's why the kind of hope you're bringing and talking about, which is not superficial and it's not simple and easy, but it's the deep kind of hope, you're absolutely right, is what people are looking for. So Gili, so you're an Israeli American. So you live here now. You're Israeli by birth.
After October 7, I just like to say After October 7, I just like to say Israeli.
You do really? So
I just more comfortable to say I'm Israeli. It's just something.
yeah. So tell us a little bit. First of all, how did you come to Combatants for Peace? And as an Israeli who's deeply connected, obviously you help lead the American Friends of. How is it for you?
So I was a big fan of Combatants for Peace for the joint memorial ceremony, and we've done the first ones in a small office in the NIF here, trying to, bring the spirit of the ceremony and the extraordinary thing I saw in.
I just want to stop. Does everybody understand that ceremony? I realized we referred to it and why I don't know that Americans understand what it is. So why don't you take a minute to explain it?
On Yom HaZikaron, it's a very controversial ceremony, but it keeps growing. It started as a small, Elik is here, one of the founders of the ceremony. Elik, maybe you want to give some background of how it started? Because
I just found out that Elik went to high school with Noah Satat in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
How small is the world, right?
Yeah, I have both these things going for me. Well, very briefly about the history of the ceremony, which in a sense is an amazing testament of the power of what we do and kind of the edifying power of proof of hope and joint mourning. The ceremony was launched for the first time in 2007. At the time, I was the Israeli director of Combatants for Peace. And in a word about myself, I'm also a member of the Bereaved Parents Circle, Family Forum. I lost my sister to Hamas terrorists in 1997, and my family has been a part of the Parent Circle ever since. Another bereaved parent reached out to us, in a sense, disgusted and outraged at the use that the Israeli government was doing with the memory of his son to justify the occupation. And he said to Combatants for Peace, through me and other people, you need to take this up, you need to protest this, you need to take back the memory of our children, and you need to talk about those that were killed on the other side. Boomer, yeah, Boomer. Remarkable, amazing man, and I was, in all honesty, I was finishing my tenure as a coordinator, and I was, okay, why not? After, let it burn after me. And we assumed that this will be a remarkably provocative, remarkably hard thing to do, that will explode in our faces, but we said, like, what the hell, let's do it. Let's disturb the peace, let's disrupt everything. And we did it on the fly, some crazy avant-garde theater at like the industrial part of Tel Aviv agreed to host us. And we expected this to be very much like we expected Combatants for Peace to be in the beginning, just a media gesture that will make some noise and will not last afterward. But to our great surprise, it attracted many, many people, many more than we expected. We expected dozens, over 300 people arrived. At the ceremony, people really were happy to participate. People were really happy to attend, and it really filled a need. It touched people in ways we could never imagine. And since then, since 2007, every year we've grown exponentially. Every year we had to change venue because we could not fit the people in the older one. It doubled in size. Last year, if I'm not mistaken, we were nearly 20,000. 15,000 and 250,000 people worldwide watched it online. I mean, we didn't expect this. We wanted to do like, you know, a splash. We wanted people to notice us. We want to annoy people, to provoke people. It went somewhere completely different. Today, this is kind of the focal point of a different voice, a desire to see a different Israel and different relations with the Palestinians. And it draws so many thousands of people every year. Of course, the government, the fascists in Israel, it drives them insane because every gesture of hope, every gesture of reconciliation, every suggestion that we are both human beings on both sides and that people grieve the same and lose the same freaks them out. Like the minister of national security right now, I mean, 3 years ago threw piss at my parents outside the ceremony. But this is the government we have. But in front of them, with the ceremony, we can really present, more than maybe everything we do, a humanist alternative to the discourse in Israel. And this compounded with the Nakba ceremony, compounded with other things we do, really, really testifies to the power of what we have and how also politics works in so incredible, unexpected ways. We didn't expect that, and we didn't want that. And I just want to say in a word, you asked about the sobering up thing. This is the desire always. Since I lost my sister in 1997, on the day I lost my sister, people asked me if I already sobered up. And there is this desire, because when we sober up, when we give up on hope, then we don't need to risk anything, and we don't need to sacrifice anything, and we don't need to venture into the unknown. We don't need courage. We can hunker down in our safe spaces and just hate and be afraid. And this desire must be fought. I mean, we never had our way. We never ran things. The violence and the aggression runs everything. How come nobody sobers up from that? This is what we're trying to suggest in the ceremony. Excuse me, and thank you very much.
Just say...
So I just want to explain, that was fantastic. I just want to explain for people who don't know Yom HaZikaron itself, for Americans who aren't familiar. In Israel, Yom HaZikaron, Memorial Day, is nothing like Memorial Day in America, which is a day of sales and beach, going to the beach. Yom HaZikaron, a day, what? It's a holy, holy day, and it is the day of observing the deaths of those who have been killed, of Israeli Jews who have been killed in, traditionally, of Israeli Jews who have been killed in the conflicts for the state.
And we used to call it the alternative memorial ceremony because it was alternative. It is so big right now, we stop using that word. We call it the memorial ceremony because it's the largest memorial ceremony in the entire Israel.
And to imagine it, what you have to imagine, and by the way, it's online now, but to imagine it is that each person stands up and tells the story of their beloved who was killed as a result of the violence and the conflict, Palestinian, Jewish. And it's just telling the stories of the people who have been killed and creating that space where you have to really listen to the pain on all the different sides, and it's not even really two sides, right? It's many different, it's very, very, very powerful, but it's very threatening, as you've described. The current government in Israel
Every government
doesn't want to see.
They try to permit the permits. Every year you have to go to the Supreme Court to tell families who have permits that on that day they can't use those permits, that on that day the government refuses them to come and mourn
We'll explain
together.
what you mean by permits.
Permits, so Palestinians who live under occupation are controlled by an oppressive system of permits. The oppressive system decides where they can go, when they can go, on a whim without explanation or due process or just random system of
So if somebody
oppression.
lives in Ramallah and wants to come to Jerusalem for or Tel Aviv, wherever the memorial service is, they have to get a permit and get permission if they're coming in on certain days, or they can be denied, or a checkpoint can be closed down, or a checkpoint can be extremely blocked, so it takes so many hours you would miss it. And there
Just say, Rabbi, that the reason this work is even possible, the reason a Combatants for Peace can hold such a thing as the joint memorial ceremony is because the movement is working together in resisting together. So there are bonds that were developed in Samud, for example, an impossible coalition of Israelis and Palestinians and diaspora Jews with the Center for Jewish Nonviolence. An impossible coalition came together because it did direct action in Area C to bring one of the families that was evicted from their lands back. So that the bonds that are created when Israelis and Palestinians resist the occupation together, that action of resistance create types of relationship and types of trust that can allow for things like the joint memorial ceremony, like all the other things we do, like the partnership. So if people just dialogue together, I understand your narrative, you understand my narrative, that in itself cannot hold a space like this. It has to be in fighting together, in resisting together, recognizing the mass imbalance of power in every second, in every space. But within that, fighting the way to fight together. And we are part of an ecosystem of binational organization and binational thinking that doesn't always have the answers, but is charting the path that the answers will come if we conceive of them together. The answers in the path will reveal itself only if we do it together. That's the binational path. Organizations like Land for All, Standing Together, CJNV, who does solidarity in Masafriata. When we do it together, that is not only manifesting that reality in the land and giving people, in Samud, I've seen something I couldn't even conceive myself, which inspired me to do this work. But when people see that it's possible, then their political imagination grows, and we can develop a culture, and we can develop a way of thinking, and we can develop a consciousness that of sharing the land and not dividing the land, of working together. And as some say, I think Aziz likes to say that, we're not on opposite sides, we're on the same side. And that type of thinking and action is extremely innovative, extremely difficult because of this imbalance of power. I have so much privilege in the land, privilege I was never aware of before Combatants for Peace. Now I understand how much privilege I hold and what is my responsibility to do with it. We did the action in Samud to mark the 50th year of the occupation, 30 minutes from where I grew up. 30 minutes from where I grew up, Palestinian families are being ethnically cleansed from their lands in Area C in order to take that land and give it to the settlers by very violent settlements. I had no idea that was going on. I was not aware of this reality happening 30 minutes from where I grew up all my life. So it's just getting to deeper and understand the reality of the land that includes a Palestinian experience in the Jewish community and in the Israeli community. Growing up, you learn about reality by decoupling the Palestinian experience completely, erasing it altogether. So part of the transformation is getting to be familiar with it and understanding how to use that joint.
We would call that here embracing honest history. I mean, it's a similar issue of how do we actually confront the actual history, not the stories that everybody's told that creates a very, you can't solve the problems if you don't actually understand the real history. And that's a big piece of the work that you all are doing. So let's open it up for a few questions, but again, I'm going to ask people to be brief, and if you're not brief, I'm going to cut you off, and if you're not respectful, I'm going to throw you out. So those are the ground rules, brief and respectful. We don't have a lot of time, okay? And
I'll just
Rabbi
add-
James is going to hold the microphone. Nobody else gets to hold the microphone, and she can take it away if she needs to.
And just a reminder that a question is generally one phrase that ends in a question mark. Great. I'm going to come here, and then I'm going to come over here.
What is your position on the two-state solution?
Just introduce yourself, just so that you're...
Hi, everyone. I'm Yael. I'm Israeli. I've lived here almost 40 years, and I am a very long-term member of CBST.
Your mother lived in Netanya, right? Naria, right, I forgot. Let's take a few questions. We're going to take a couple of questions, and then they'll answer. Gathering a few questions, okay?
To make it simple, I'm Judy, by the way. I've been a member a long time. Has Combatant for Peace considered or talked about a position on what's going on now? Because while October 7th was a tragedy, there's a tragedy right now. Do you have a position on it? And if not, why not?
By right now, you mean?
About what's going on in Gaza.
In Gaza, okay. There are a lot of terrible things in the world happening right now. Just wanted to clarify which one. Good, Gaza. Okay, let's take one more question, and then we'll ask our guests to respond.
I'm Roberta, first-time visitor here. I know you all met with several members of Congress this week, so I would love to hear just what impressions you have about what we need to be saying, at least to the Congress people you met with. Like, what do they need to hear from us to get them to know that we want them to stand up for what you're doing?
All right, any of those three?
Okay, so maybe, yeah, to combine like some comments maybe. First of all, definitely Combatants for Peace, like earlier on, called for ceasefire, for hostages, prisoners exchange, and for a historical solution and a real solution to the roots of the conflict, rather than managing and ceasefire and again to another round. So this is really a clear in Combatants for Peace. We spoke about it everywhere in media, issued statements. And by the way, this is related to the previous question we talked about, the challenges after October 7. All the organizations that are joined, that Gili spoke about, were not able to put a statement together, by the way. It's not easy. But I would think Combatants for Peace relatively, I mean, my friends here can agree with me or not, relatively in much better like understanding with each other in comparison to other groups, I would say. So there was also a demonstration, the only demonstration that happened in West Bank last Friday, organized by Combatants for Peace and our alliances, a few other organizations, since first one. And of course, there were some demonstrations in Tel Aviv, we can speak about it, but the one in West Bank where was faced with violence of the police and the army. They arrested some of the organizers actually in the night before, Ahmed Hilo specifically from Gaza. Even though the demonstration like raised signs to that in a Palestinian eye is too moderate. So, because like as people said here, like I think the system want us to be separated. They don't want us to get together. They tried in different ways that people will not come together to the demonstration, even though it's non-violence demonstration and so on. And I think this is also what was our message in Washington to the decision makers. I felt first time since maybe the movement started, I felt first time they're really listening to us. I know we hate politicians and politics, but to be honest, this is what happened with us. I was there with Tiffany, our US director. Gili was there. Chen alone and Avner and Rana, our Palestinian director, and then Iris came later. So we have a week of meetings there, actually, maybe 6 meetings a day. And sometimes the meetings were supposed to take place for like half an hour, and they stayed with us like 1 hour. And a good sign of this, first time I saw these people like opening their heart and emotions moved. They showed some like signals, like emotional signals in most of the cases. So this was really important, and definitely we have specific requests to them about the ceasefire, about political solutions, about building or supporting alternative to the radicalization, and supporting non-violence struggle. And also, like we spoke openly and directly, especially Avner and Chen, as Israelis, that they care about their people, that they are afraid, because, you know, the system against Hamas, that's easy position. They spoke about their own Hamas, which is the settler movement and the Israeli government. This was also clear. And we spoke about the sanctions against the settlers, which is a symbolic act, but we appreciate this to start. And we see now more countries taking positions there. Yeah.
And the two-state solution, what's your...
I thought
you avoided that. Okay.
that Iris will
Iris
take it.
who wants to talk about two-state solution?
Okay, Combatants for Peace started in 2005, like around the two-state solution era. Combatants for Peace started around the two-state solution, the two-state era. You know, like a post-Oslo a bit. That was the formal position. And just to be truth and honest, we've been talking about this every other year. And to be honest, we tried last year, I think, to build our strategy and what we'll support, and we couldn't really reach an agreement that everybody agree, like 1 state, 2 states, 3 states. So what we said, we'll find a way to write it down this way, and this is the most honest way. We write, because we have alliances and we want to be politically a bit correct and so on, 2-state solution / any other agreed solution. Something like this. Some people now really support the 2-state, 1 homeland. And I think land for all. I think this initiative is getting really a momentum right now. A lot of people. We're holding a webinar with them, I don't know, Tiffany, when, February 27 or sometime. So to give more visibility to this idea. Oh, okay.
I just want to add something about 2-state, 1 state. I don't think it's the issue. I think the issue is sit down and find a solution, a diplomatic solution, a political solution, and not a military solution. And there are at least 3 options. And it's only like if the government or the leaders will be forced to sit down and find a solution, and the one that could force them is the United States. So just bring them to the table and find this solution. The technical issues, where will be the border, and which side will have which authority, this is not important. This is what I think.
I think one of the things that's hard for Americans to understand, which speaks to how powerful your presentation is and how powerful Combatants for Peace is. Americans, as you referred to earlier, obliquely perhaps, love a good movie where there's a bad guy and a good guy, and it's super clear who's the bad guy and who's the good guy, and by the end of the 2-hour movie, the good guy has vanquished the bad guy, and the movie ends, and you walk out into the sunset. And it's a disease here about everything. And I think that disease has also impacted what I would call the Free Palestine movement here as well, that it's kind of gone into it's also created a narrative where there's a good guy, and now the good guy has shifted from being the Israeli Jews to being the Palestinians, and where the Jews are the bad guys, and it's as simplistic and stupid as the other story. And it is as dangerous as the other story. And we're seeing this intense explosion of anti-Semitism that comes from that new story. And it is pretty new, and that we can't adopt and embrace what it would mean to stand for the full liberation of Palestinians. And that doesn't mean destroying Jews. The left in this country is struggling with that right now. And that's the place where the shift has, you know what I'm saying? It's like we've just changed who the good guy is and who the bad guy is. I said to somebody, I was in this really big argument with somebody, I said, you know where that whole good guy, bad guy movie thing comes from, right? That was Cowboys and Indians. Don't we reject that as the model for a movie of good guys and bad guys now? And it's like, it's a curse, and Americans can be really drawn into that. Just tell me, who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, and tell me what's the answer. Is it a two-state solution, or do we, get rid of the Palestinians, get rid of the Jews? And the power of the statement of saying there are 7 million Jews, there are 7 million Palestinians, nobody is going anywhere. And Vivian Silver said this. On our last trip to Israel, we met with her, and she said exactly that. She said, there is only one future. The future has to be a future in which these peoples have a shared future. There is no other answer. What the details are can be worked out with people with goodwill, and with the Americans saying, don't get up from the table or you lose your allowance. That would help. That would help a lot. But the idea of saying, look, this isn't going to win by one people vanquishing another people. There is no solution that will be a military solution. Zero chance of that being successful. You'll be able to oppress people for X amount of time, but it's not going to work. And that has become so hard for people. And here we are in the United States struggling with the whole honest history story, right? That, of course, America was founded on genocide and enslavement of Africans, period. And of course we can say that is a part of the foundation of this country, but we want to move forward, and we can only move forward if we honestly acknowledge what that history is. The same thing is true. But I think the fear that a lot of Jews feel here in the United States, and we see it here in New York City, is that the story has now been shifted. And if you're on the left, the Palestinians are the righteous, the good guys in that movie, and the Jews are the bad guys and need to be vanquished. And the power of saying this must be a binational solution, and it must be one that respects and honors all the peoples involved in this struggle, or there will be no one left. The stakes are so high. And as you said, we don't know if we're on the verge of a global disaster because of this particular situation. So it's not just a distant stake, but the power of nonviolence is that it forces you to say, I have to look at somebody I have seen as my enemy and figure out how I can make them an ally. What can I do? How can I transform the narrative and the conversation enough to understand we're on the same side? And that side is survival of the human experiment. And Jews can't disappear in this, Palestinians can't disappear in this. And it needs to be honest, which the model of these binational organizations, I'm in awe. The work that you all do to stay connected, to walk away, come back together, to argue, to debate is so deeply moving and a model for everybody. But here's the one thing, be suspicious of anybody who says the only problem that exists in this conflict is on the other side. Be suspicious of anybody who says the other side are the warmongers, our side are the peace lovers. Be suspicious of anybody who says the leadership problem is the other side and not our side. Those three things will tell you everything about how somebody sees the situation. Every side in this conflict has bad leaders. Every side in this conflict has great people. Every side in this conflict has a vision of the possibilities of what it could be, and every side yearns for peace for all of our children. And anybody who tells you one side has a monopoly on those things, I mean, one thing that's so fascinating about what's happening in Israel right now is that if you advocate for the release of the hostages, it's a left-wing position in Israel right now. Here in America, it's a right-wing position. But in Israel, it's a left-wing position to demand for the release of hostages because the government of Israel has done everything it can since October 7th to make sure those hostages don't get released. How are we in that kind of situation? So they're using it as a tactic. They're using human beings as a tactic. So this is not just a situation, oh my God, Hamas is evil, but Israel's government is democratically elected. You know what I mean. Anyway, so that, we have to constantly remember that, and you folks are the models of that. And it's really hard here. It's not easy, and it's anxiety producing, right? Because we all want to be on the right side, right? Everybody wants to be the good guys. And everybody wants to see the others as the bad guys. And it's a little bit of a mind thing to try and expand your mind enough to say both sides deserve to live in peace and full liberation. Not only the Jews and not only the Palestinians. And the left in this country can't do it right now. It's as bad, it is, I am horrified at what some of the stuff that we see, and yet, we have people like, not just the three of you, but all of you here, to model for us, hanging on in the middle of so much hate and so much garbage thrown at you from all the different sides, and insisting on the possibility of real liberation of this land. So I want to thank you so much for being with us tonight, and thank you all for joining us. So Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Service is 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. You guys are released from that. You don't have to come.